So welcome, everybody. I'm Lisa Herrick. I think almost everybody here knows me. I started 31st Street in 2017 with 30 people, and now we are up to about 2,400. And we've done many things in the last 8 years. We're still going strong. Um, Today, really, this monthly meeting is, in my mind, going to focus on just three things. One, briefly, to return to election day and try to refresh our minds and spirits with all of those wins, and to say a little bit about our role in those wins, because in the ensuing weeks, I feel like we've just, crumbled under another pile of garbage news. But that was an amazing day. It was an amazing broad stroke of wins in so many places up and down the ballot. So I just want to take a moment to bring us back to that moment and really savor it. I'm going to read a little bit of a letter from Stacey Carroll's campaign manager. We did a lot for Stacey. We just campaigned every single weekend. We raised a lot of money for her. She was an amazing candidate. Many of us met her and loved her. And I have a letter from her campaign manager to us. So I want to read a bit of that. And then finally, we're going to turn to Iowa and hear from Aaron Lehman of the Iowa Farmers Union and Shawn Phetteplace, who is with Main Street Alliance. And of course, you're going to hear from Jim about sort of why we're doing this and what's happening. But we're going to turn our focus to Iowa for many good reasons, which you will hear in a moment. Before that, let me just read a little bit from Nate DePaul, who was Stacey Carroll. Stacey Carroll ran for the legislature in Virginia, and it's near Stafford. And what he says is, "Hi, 31st Street. For 31st Street on Saturday, the first had 816 doors and 222 voters surveyed. I think it goes without saying, 31st Street absolutely owns not just a huge part of our win, but in the work that carried us to down ballot victories as well. In the Acrea district, where I sent y'all a bunch of times across 95 to Courthouse Precinct, we carried that school board race with only a 4% lead, which would have been well lost had not your team been doing their part to turn out low propensity voters of color. And turn out they did. Over 1,700 voters came out to vote in Courthouse, 500 more than in the 2023 election, and we won the vote by a margin over 75%. This was groundbreaking win in a Trump +2 district, and 31st Street helped see the work you guys started previously in flipping Stafford blue in past cycles come to fruition. I will be forever grateful that you saw what many others could not before the fall, that Stacey and our team were poised to flip this district as long as we got the help we needed from partners like yourself. We absolutely could not have done this without you, and now we can turn our attention toward the midterms to keep this momentum going." So that's a lovely thank you. And I just think we really need to kind of take that in and just sit with it for a minute, because we would not be here if we did not think we were effective and if we did not have wins like 2025. It keeps us going, and it proves to us that we do know what we're doing, and we're doing it well. And unfortunately, I hear frequently from other people who have tried various grassroots groups up and down the Northeast, and they just get frustrated because there's no focus and there's no data, and they just feel like they're floundering. And I think 31st Street helps all of us not only know what to do, but how to do it. So anyway, yay for the Democrats in 2025, and yay for us. And now I will turn it over to Jim.
Well, that's quite a testimonial we got from him. And you don't usually get things at that sort of detailed, sort of micro level where you feel like you could do something like that. So now it's up to us to do some more. So as I usually do, I'm going to share my screen and go through a number of right. So hopefully people can see that. Hope people can hear me. Yes, Shawn says yes. Good. Thank you, Shawn. All right. This is the overall scorecard for Virginia. We actually were of the major sort of, we focus on the House of Delegates, so the major candidates that we supported, and I know Main Street Alliance actually supported some of these folks also. We were like 9 for 9, and there were, I guess, 4 other candidates that won. But I'm especially happy with Stacey Carroll and Virgil Thornton, and in a way, Lindsay Doherty. Some people may not also know that we supported 5 municipal candidates in North Carolina, and they all won. 4 were challengers, and that was important for their offices, but also they were selected by our leader sort of in North Carolina on the ground, Colton, for their strategic value going forward to next year. And then just to wrap up what we did, Abigail Spanberger and the statewide team, of course, benefit, but also our Wisconsin support and Caitlin Dre as well. So we had a lot of wins. We actually try to be on the edge where some people don't win, but everything just went really well. So much the better. Okay, what do we do? $300,000 of early support for House of Delegate races, and some of it was actually in late last year. And then we did about 7,000 doors, including 5,600 for Stacey Carroll. And I will say that some other Virginia groups kind of latched on to what we were doing, and they showed up when when we were getting our walk list. They kind of decided we were getting good turfs, and so they added on to what we did. All right, but that's we can talk some more about in the after chat if you like about Virginia and other things. But I really want to shift now to the forward-looking part, and just to say that in many ways I'm very optimistic. Politically, I think we're in great shape. I repeat, great shape for the midterms, and it keeps getting better. But the point is that, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but we got to seize the opportunity. All right, so a little bit of data. I know this kind of looks all bunched up and so forth, but I think it's actually pretty straightforward. This guy, Elliot Morris, a really good data guy, calculated how much better the Democrats did by county in the 4 key states, Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Now, most of these are rural counties, including so many in Georgia and so forth, but also these other places. We did well in not just in urban, suburban, exurban, but we did well in rural counties in these states. And polling, you don't get really good data on rural. This is the best data I've seen that's showing that we are making progress, and we should, because rural communities are really getting shafted. But this is the first thing I've seen. So in addition to Latinos and young and independents and young people and so forth, we really are making significant inroads. And in the shutdown, Trump's approval rating continued to decline. And I will just say that, in my view, we won the shutdown. That's not the right kind of terminology and a way to win, but we showed we were strong. It didn't end the way everybody wanted, but we showed we were strong, and we also showed we cared about the country, and that's going to help us. Last piece of data is in the so-called generic ballot. Voters are coming our way overtly that they will say that they will support Democrats running for Congress. I think when we get good candidates out there, we'll do even better than that. So we can win the House. We can also have a very promising opportunity to win the Senate, but the Senate is tougher. That's why we are focusing, not exclusively, but to a large extent, on the Senate. Which brings me to, in a way, one of the most important slides I want to show you. This was in Lisa's newsletter this past week. We're calling this our 3x3 infrastructure strategy. So it's 3 states and it's 3 pillars of infrastructure. This is infrastructure season, and it will be for a good number of months. This is the best way to spend money, in my opinion, not the only way, but So we have these three states, but we also have social media, grassroots groups, and state parties. And we've already done, recall, in Alaska supporting the Senator Sullivan accountability work, which, by the way, they're producing great videos that I think is getting good traction. We, by the way, have just wrapped up funding for the Iowa Creator Corps, thanks to you folks. Um, and we're essentially, we funded the full amount. It's going to run, but those folks are up and doing their stuff in Iowa, Patrick and Liz, and it's running. They made contact with a bunch of creators and have a bunch of process that we're going to. So within these sort of cells, if you will, the 3x3, we're looking for the best opportunities. And right now it's grassroots groups, and we really think we hit the jackpot with these two groups in Iowa that you're going to hear from. But backing up a little bit to talk about the U.S. Senate and why we need to, go to places like Iowa and Alaska and so forth. This is my current rack up, needing to win 51 seats. We can't do it. I mean, it'd be very hard to do it just with the ones that are sort of kind of in the public spotlight of that I've got listed here. And we still have to defend these other states, notably Georgia and New Hampshire. So what do we need? Well, we need more good shots on goal. This is the way politics works to some extent. You got to have more candidates running and so forth. So that's why we're moving to these three states. But now let's talk specifically about Iowa. Why is it Iowa? And I got a bunch of reasons why it's Iowa, some of which you could probably guess, but maybe not. So first of all three seats have a Super Bowl, what I call a Super Bowl election with the U.S. Senate. In the case of Iowa, two highly competitive. I would say we might even have the edge in those seats, and the third seat as well. Also a governor's race where I think we have the edge, and multiple other races. And the virtue of supporting infrastructure is you can support all kinds of races. You're not just limited to one siloed contribution and so forth. So that's the major advantage, a major advantage of this approach. Again, why Iowa hurt big time by MAGA policies. I know Aaron, particularly from the Iowa Farmers Union, is going to talk about that. Turns out the Iowa Republican state governance is not very popular either. They kind of botched their job, and the people, the anti-incumbency in Iowa is pretty strong. We've seen some encouraging polling, not great polling, but fairly good polling that is definitely very encouraging in my opinion. We had these two Democratic special election wins in Trump plus 20, whatever it was, districts, including Caitlin Dray. Again, one of our main principles, other people were looking other places. Roy Cooper in North Carolina raised $45 million. We're going to focus here and have our money go further. And point I made in the last, I'm not showing slow this time, but we are losing population in the blue states. We are going to lose House races. We're going to lose electoral college. We have to move into some of these other states. And we need to be, beginning now is the best way to do that. So why the Farmers Union and why the Main Street Alliance? Well, it's almost kind of pretty obvious. I mean, farmers clearly are somewhat a group and their communities. It's not just the farmers themselves, but also, as you'll hear from the Main Street Alliance, their constituency are small business people in small towns and cities. Those people have been hurt a huge amount by MAGA policies like Obamacare, like tariffs and so forth. So we need to make inroads with those people. And these are the folks that can do the work on our all behalf. So you'll see they're highly committed and competent. Here's another thing, though. They're pretty small. I don't want to say they're operating on a shoestring, but it's it's not too far from that. So we need to get them up from a big shoestring to a strong rope or a chain or something like that. And they can do that. And of course, doing it now is important. And because it takes time to get all the stuff to scale up, hire people, make relationships, and so forth. Okay, now bear with me a little bit because I'm going to talk about how we're contributing here. So we have a $200,000 goal overall, $100,000 for each organization. Now that's pretty straightforward, but we're trying to do it both through a C4 and the C3 route. So you recall that the tax deductible C3 route, they can do a whole lot of advocacy. They can do a huge amount with that. But we also want to raise money for them, and it's harder to raise for the C4 side of it. And so actually for this, what we're doing today and for the fundraiser, we're just trying to do the C4 part of it. And we're going to try to use some other sort of informal and other outreach to try to do the C3 route. So today for what we're just talking about is the C4 route. Now, let me also say that as one detail, the Iowa Farmers Union is actually a union and they are a C5. But it turns out a C5 is pretty much the same as a C4, so I'm just calling it a C4 for the sake of simplicity. But that allows them to do partisan things, which you can't do under the C3 banner. So we're going to have a donation link in the chat. Now, here's one more thing to bear in mind. We are doing this kind of for simplicity, but also for the mechanical reasons to make it kind of work better. We're actually funding this through the donor table. So Iowa had, like many states, has a donor table with a C3 and a C4. The C4 is called the Alliance for a Better Iowa. So when you go to donate in the link, if you'll see it's just for the Alliance for a Better Iowa, but they will divide it equally between the two of these organizations. And I think dividing it equally is actually a very good way to go. We appreciate if and request that you're okay with that the money that you donate goes equally to these two organizations. Lastly, we have a fundraiser December 4th, and we would very much appreciate if you would be an ambassador. And we do most of the work for you. You just reach out to people, you connect with old friends you might not have talked to in a long time. And my estimable sister, Mary Pence, is the person to talk to, and I'm sure she'll put her email in the chat if you would kindly be an ambassador. So I think that takes us to our great team, Aaron Lehman of the Iowa Farmers Union and Shawn Phetteplace from the Main Street Alliance. And now I'll turn it over to Aaron.
I'll make sure I unmute myself and get myself up to speed here, but it is a real pleasure to be here to share a little bit about the Iowa Farmers Union. So thank you so much. My name is Aaron Lehman. I farm here near Alleman, Iowa. I'm in the basement of our farmhouse here a couple weeks after harvest has been completed for us. We grow corn, soybeans, oats, and hay in our farm, and I farm both organically and in a conventional operation as well. My son is farming with me. He is the sixth generation on our farm here in Iowa. We love farming because we have a passion to grow things that feed our community and help feed our state and the world. And we want to do it in a way that makes our neighborhood and our state a better place. And I get to serve as the president of the Iowa Farmers Union. I've been president for 9 years. We have about 1,100 members spread across the state. We advocate for family farmers, for sustainable agriculture, for thriving rural communities, and a healthy landscape. And we strive for a more just and equitable food system. And yes, we have a dedicated organization in the 501c3 space and an organization in a 501c5 space. We work in community here in Iowa. We are in coalition, and we serve as a fiscal agent for the Food System Coalition, for instance, and the Iowa Alliance for Renewable Agriculture. And we have deep connections with our labor partners. and it is an extremely important piece of our work. The administration policies have had an incredibly harmful impact on all Iowans, and especially in our rural communities. Right now, we're facing massive healthcare insurance cost increases. Not only are farmers trying to figure out how to pay that bill for the coming year, but those extra costs on those ACA policies and the biggest Medicaid cuts in our history are putting our rural hospitals and clinics on the brink. I know every farmer's story is different, but for my own family, for instance, the same policy for 2026 that we're paying in 2025, it's more than double the amount. And farmers across the state are facing this same situation, which leads to all sorts of bad decisions that farmers are trying to make as they line up financing for farming this coming year. Food insecurity has been a huge issue in Iowa, and Iowa is a very, very abundant state, and it's inexplicable that we have such food insecurity issues in Iowa. But of course, it is terrible that we Iowans, who like to pride ourselves on feeding people, and we farm because we like to feed people, to see these nutrition programs used as a weapon is just unacceptable. And of course, USDA cuts and staff shortages have made it a much harder place to put those farmer-public partnerships in place in order to get to cleaner water. Farmer demand is great. It's even bigger than the availability, but the current policies and these cuts have made it even harder to put good conservation practices on the farm. So our work here in Iowa is to elevate farmers and progressive rural leaders as trusted messengers for rural Iowa. We want to elevate them to move the needle towards more progressive policies and more progressive candidates. And we've been stepping into that space through local, state, and national media. And I'll just give a couple of examples. This is our member, Beth Hoffman from Lovelia, speaking out about higher ACA premiums to Iowa Public Radio. In addition to that, I wanted to share about Berlene Wohlbeater. She's speaking from her Tama County farm about chaotic trade policies and the impact on family farm producers. This is on the CBS Evening News and Money Watch. And then just a couple weeks ago, this is me on the cover of the New York Times. The article is entitled, "In Trump-Friendly Iowa, the President's Policies Have Hit Hard." And we had a number of members contributing to that space. So we are elevating our farmers, our trusted messengers, through a great team at the Iowa Farmers Union. This team is a very dedicated, and for people early in their career or at mid-place in their career, they are very experienced and skilled. We want to bring these folks to full-time status with us. They've been doing a fantastic job, but we need to step up our work in this area. We would bring all of these folks up to full-time status. And what would this help us do? It would help us to bring us to a place where we can endorse candidates from the bottom of the ballot all the way up the ballot. It allows us to counterbalance the conservative leaning farm groups here in Iowa. You know, we know here in Iowa that farm groups nationally and here have made their conservative leanings clear to this administration. And even when the administration does things that are clearly hurting their farmers, clearly hurting their interests, they have gone along with it, or they've stayed quiet. Well, that's not us. Our members have been standing up to these destructive policies right from inauguration day, and we haven't stopped since. This is really ingrained in our organization's work and the work through our 110-year history. And our folks are really stepping in this role in a way that I'm very, very proud of and makes me very hopeful. So instead of pitting rural versus urban, we're building connections across the food system and across the state demographics. Instead of targeting our diverse populations to gain political points, we're building connections across the food system because we know that our communities are stronger when we do that. And our food system relies on our diverse workforce here in Iowa to harvest our crops and get our food to customers. So in short, you know, what's the return on the investment? with the Iowa Farmers Union? Well, it's new members, right? It's leveraged Iowa investment. It's more trusted farmer messengers and more earned media stories. And all that leads up to getting real results with progressive candidates here in Iowa. So we are very excited about the next steps that we can take to step into this space. So, that's really briefly what we wanted to try to relay. Before wrapping up, Jim, I just wanted to say again, a huge thank you for allowing us to share our work with our farmers and rural leaders. And I'm very excited about what steps are next. So, Jim, again, a huge thank you to the entire group.
Great. Okay, over to you, Shawn.
Well, cool. Thank you very much. And that was a great presentation by the Farmers Union. My name is Shawn Phetteplace. I am not far from Iowa. I'm just about an hour away in Madison, Wisconsin, up from the border. And I'm the National Campaigns Director for the Main Street Alliance. I've been with MSA for about 5 years. We have 30,000 members nationally, and we work on small business issues. Our membership is generally women, is generally on the smaller side. We do have some larger members for sure, but we generally are the sort of Main Street mom and pop type businesses that many folks think of when they think of entrepreneurship. And we had been active in Iowa years back, originally when the organization was founded, and we've remained active in the state. However, I would say we've taken a much more deliberate interest in the state recently for a variety of reasons. First off, you just have, it's the worst run economy in the country. If you look at the numbers, Governor Kim Reynolds and the legislature has actually absolutely has driven the economy into the ditch. You also have massive quality of life issues. Cancer rates are amongst the highest in the country there. And you also have ongoing challenges with tariffs and healthcare. One of the things I'm most proud of that we have done as an organization since January 20th is we've held the administration accountable for the things that they're doing to hurt our members. And so we've actually sued the administration 7 times now with the federal funding freeze, the layoffs, the recent SNAP case, we went to the Supreme Court on that. And so we're both moving sort of like the actual legal process as well as helping to shape the court of public opinion. And federally, on tariffs on healthcare, our member stories have been seen since April 50 million times. And so we've helped to shape the debate, to shape the perspective around those issues, and really elevate our leaders in the fight to do that. They're really the spokespeople themselves. Small business owners are amongst the most trusted people in the country. If you look at Pew polling and other things, they are. They also generally have been really souring on this administration. And so and looking ahead to 2026, this election is going to be all about the economy. It's going to be about cost of living. It's going to be about healthcare. It's going to be about having it be really difficult to put food on the table. And so small business owners are, as well as farmers, and many farmers are small business owners, and there's a lot of overlap. We work very closely with the Farmers Union in Wisconsin, as an example. I look forward to working more closely with the Iowa Farmers Union as well. We're working to increase our capacity in the state. As Jim said at the beginning of the call, there's a lot of opportunity in the state, but there's a need to reach persuadable voters. And small business owners are really well positioned to do that. We've proven the effectiveness of those programs. We were involved in 6 state legislative races in Wisconsin in 2024. We were just in Virginia. We supported John McAuliffe, who was running in the 30th. You had the Virgil Thornton race against AC Cordoza, which I know you all worked on, and then also the Jessica Anderson race as well. And so we've demonstrated over a couple of cycles now our ability to both do sort of the base building, power building work with our champions to organize in their communities, but also to leverage that for the electoral work to make sure that as much as you might want to have better policy, if you don't have better politicians, it's not going to happen. And so we really work to do both. I would say in Iowa specifically, we're looking at the 3 congressional districts. The first district, Marionette Miller Meeks. You've got the third district with Zach Nunn, which I'll just point out, there were 2 polls that came out. They were internal polls, so take it with a huge grain of salt. but it had the Democrats leading by more than 10 points against Zach Nunn. I'm not sure I believe that. I think that race is going to be very close, but it shows how the ground's kind of shifting underneath the Republicans' feet at the moment. So we're going to be very focused on building out our capacity. Des Moines, we have really decent membership already. Ray Gun, if anybody familiar, they're an iconic business in Des Moines. Mike's a big leader with us, but we're also looking at Waterloo, working at Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Iowa City, and Dubuque, and really organizing not just in the bigger cities, but in the smaller towns all throughout the state. And so, looking ahead to 2026, between now and really the spring, it's all about base building. We're working with Sue Dinsdale, who leads Iowa Citizen Action, to do that work. The funds that are raised will allow us to hire a full-time staffer. When I first started in this role, I was the Wisconsin guy to begin. And in the first 2 years, I did 2,000 one-on-ones. And it was a lot of cups of coffee, a lot of tours of businesses, but that's kind of what you need to do in order to be able to build real, genuine relationships with people, and to build something real and not just an astroturf thing that, is kind of flash in the pan and then disappears. We're very committed to long-term power building all across both Iowa and the country. And we're very interested in making a longer term investment there, but it requires that sort of like blood, sweat, and tears organizing work. So the funds that are raised here, we're going to combine with some other funds we've already received to be able to hire a full-time staffer who can move that work over the course of the next 9 months, next year, really. So that's a bit about us, a bit about the work we do, and just happy to answer any questions folks might have when we get to that part.
Thank you so much. It's really interesting to learn about all of this. It's just stuff that I think most of us really don't know much about. So questions I think are in the chat, and Aaron Hamburger, our membership leader. Oh, Mary, sorry. Mary is going to say a few words first.
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. So I have a question for you. If the national news this week has seemed incredibly chaotic and even crazy, please raise your hand. Yeah, I thought so. And me too. It's just been a wild up and down. And I want to read you something that Robert Hubble said yesterday. He said, if it feels to you that the news cycle has become more volatile and faster paced over the last 2 weeks, it is not your imagination. We are witnessing simultaneous crises in the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of the federal government. And state governments are contributing to the sense of bedlam by engaging in mid-census redistricting. So, this weekend, let's take a deep breath and recognize that the chaos is a sign that our movement is gaining purchase with each passing day. We are stronger, more organized, and more effective today than we were only a few short weeks ago. So, I'd like you to join my husband Dan and me in taking an impactful action to convince voters to get to the ballot box and vote for Democrats up and down the ballot in the important state of Iowa. The first action you can take to increase the impact of these two, as you've just seen, really impressive grassroots groups is to click the link in the chat box and make a contribution. My husband Dan and I are contributing $4,000, $2,000 to each group. Please join us in as impactful a way as you can. And second, as Jim mentioned earlier, you can agree to invite friends and coworkers and family to our December 4th Zoom fundraiser for these two groups. You know, it's really easy and really rewarding. The fact of the matter is that lots of people in your network are looking for a way to be effective. They want someone to make the case to them. This is something you can do that will make a difference. So I've put my email address in the chat once. I will put it in again. Please email me if you would be willing to be what we used to call a co-host and we now call an ambassador. Thank you so much for your openness to both of these requests.
Thank you, Mary. As always, eloquent, and the link is in the chat if you want to donate. So I'm Aaron Hamburger. I do membership here at 31st Street, and I also do curating of questions for our Q&A. So we have lots of them in the chat, and already our guests, Aaron and Shawn. I know there's two Aarons, so it'll be very confusing. And we even spell our names the same way, which I love. But we'll try to keep it clear. So the first question that I have, and I know we sort of touched on this a little bit, but I actually saw the writer Jonathan Chait, the political writer, say that Trump's policies have caused a one-state recession in Iowa. And so I was curious if you could just, like in a nutshell, sort of sum up like what is it specifically that is like made it's been particularly kind of arduous on Iowa as opposed to like other states or surrounding states. And is it, we keep saying like, is it going to break through? Like people still have this kind of tribal loyalty that is even against their own interests. Is this different? Like, is this moment, are we finally seeing things changing? So maybe Aaron, if you want to start, and then Shawn.
Sure, there's a lot that could be said about this. You know, so often people ask me, well, how is this happening, and what could be turning the tide? And I wouldn't say it's necessarily a policy that might have led to quite a bit of Trump support. A lot of folks in rural Iowa have felt neglected, and even if they get attention that might not make a lot of sense, might not lead to a pragmatic solution, they lean on the attention that was given, even if it does not lead to progressive policies or policies that are in their own self-interest. No farmer approached me and said that they voted for Trump because of this trade chaos. In fact, they said, well, he wouldn't do it again, Willie, because I might vote that way, but surely we learn better, right? Well, we didn't learn any better. In fact, we've done worse on that area. And that's again and again. It was not a policy choice, but rather, unfortunately, choosing a candidate that did choose policies that are really, really hurting farmers. Farmers are hurting. They report that they're on the brink of a crisis. They're trying to line up financing just to get a crop in the ground next year. There's speculation about who won't be putting a crop in the ground next year, but someone else will be farming it. The impact is hitting hard. And take that on top of us not taking care of one another through our food insecurity issues that we're having with the SNAP program and with increased health costs, and all these factors coming together, increased monopolies taking a hold of Iowa and trying to dictate policies at the federal level and the state level. All these things are coming together, and it really, farmers feel very much on the brink, and I think are very much looking for a positive path that brings people together rather than using us to divide us against one another.
Great.
Yeah, and obviously I'll take the lead of the Farmers Union talking about farmers. I'll just point out though that I believe Iowa has the highest concentration of soybean farmers in the country.
That's right.
Or it's got to be up there, and they have been amongst the most impacted by all the nonsense from the administration. There was a couple questions in the chat about the impact of tariffs. The impact of tariffs has been really strange because it's been very unpredictable. We'll see what the Supreme Court decides to do. We actually had several members outside the Supreme Court I guess that was like week before last, maybe is when oral arguments happened. It all blends together at this point, to be honest with you. But they were speaking about the impacts. And we have members who, if the tariffs don't get overturned, they're going to go out of business. We actually have several members who already have gone out of business because they've been very exposed to certain industries and certain types of input costs. And I'll just say this, I'm not an economist. However, I talk to a lot of business owners, and we've worked a lot on the tariff issue. And I do think that you're going to see, a lot of people have been selling existing inventory. They had been trying their best. They had been laying folks off. They had been doing other actions before, raising prices, because they knew that if they did that, they would lose out on the competition that would not be doing it. And I think, are going to see for a lot of products a spike in pricing in the later part of this year, going to next year, because people had existing inventory, they sold it, and now they're starting to get into the more of the tariffed inventory. And so, when it comes to like, are people going to remember? I think people are going to be experiencing those price hikes at a higher level next year than they have been. And so, yeah, I mean, as far as like a localized recession, I think there was an analysis done today that over half of all the states in the country are technically in a recession, and it's a very uneven recession. I do think we're going to enter a national recession in the weeks and months to come, but there's certainly some states impact feeling it the most, and that includes Iowa.
Great. Thank you for that perspective. Another question that there was some conversation about this in the chat was, Iowa used to be blue, or at least, used to be kind of a swing state, and it's been kind of reliably red. And the question, Obama won it twice. Why has it become so reliably red? Social issues seems to be one explanation. I'm curious, though, to hear your thoughts. Maybe again, Aaron, you want to start, and then Shawn.
Sure. Well, we have to remember too that out of the last 12 elections, presidential elections, 6 have gone one way, 6 have gone the other here in Iowa. And yes, we have had a lot of attention from our current president here in Iowa. He spent a lot of time here in primary season and caucus season, and that has contributed a lot to this appeal that is Iowan. But let's remember too, when President Trump hasn't been on the ballot, he has not done well here in Iowa. His supporters have not done well here in Iowa, and we also saw in the last election, even though we didn't get the news we wanted, we saw some real significant impacts in our communities that were organizing from the bottom of the ballot up. And those efforts are making their way upward in the ballot. So we've got a lot of work to do yet, but we do think that there is a tremendous amount of potential.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'll just speak to this. I was a very early supporter of former President Obama. I went to something called Camp Obama in August of 2007, back when nobody really thought he had a chance. And I was a college student in Wisconsin at the time, and it seemed like a fun campaign to get involved in. And they were already building out infrastructure in Iowa at that point. They had, I think, one of the most robust field operations in state history, and really invested really heavily in the caucus. Former President Obama also is from a bordering state in Illinois, which meant he probably was in the media a lot in Iowa. So I think there's things that are a little unique to that campaign that made him an especially strong candidate for Iowa. But I think it also speaks just the need to invest in robust organizing on a longer term basis, because I think that was a big key to his success in the state.
Okay, great. Shawn, another question for you. Is the Main Street Alliance related to the National Trust for Historic Preservation's National Main Street Program?
If I could go back in time, I mean, I like the name of the organization. I think it captures what we are, but there's a lot of very similarly named organizations, which sometimes causes problems. We are a 501(c)(3), C4, and PAC. Federally, we have Main Street Alliance, Main Street Action, Main Street Action PAC. There are some organizations that do like downtown revitalization. There's even some churches that have a similar name, but those are separate from us. We're a national advocacy organization that has three tax statuses that is really a membership-based organization, and we're not affiliated with those organizations. We do work a lot on economic development, and we work with many groups that do that work, but they're separate from us.
Got it. Okay, another question a lot of people are asking. As we know, Trump's policies change from day to day. The Supreme Court might come into things. Maybe Trump will offer a bailout, or maybe he'll take back the tariffs. So the question is, will Iowans kind of support him and Republicans again, or what kind of arguments could keep that from working? How do we stop that? So maybe Aaron, you want to start, and then Shawn.
Sure, I'll start on that one. We farmers are we're watching the markets really closely every single day, the overnight markets every single day, and you would have expected that with the large with the deal that came out of the China news that our markets would respond. They kind of yawned. They responded some, but it's without looking very very closely. Even you find out that the current deal, for instance, was too late. China had already bought so many soybeans from people who used to buy from us here. They've developed relationships with farmers in other countries, and they bought a lot of soybeans really cheap before they entered into this deal with Senator Trump. So, and farmers notice this, right? They pay close attention to it. And in addition to that, I want to reiterate too, farmers, they join organizations and they make trips to cultivate these relationships. They're deeply invested in building these relationships overseas. They feel betrayed. The rug was pulled out from them. Years and years of work cultivating these relationships, building good relationships, working in good faith, and all that work can be undone very, very quickly. So Iowa farmers had a huge investment that was also undermined by this administration, and that's very difficult to forget.
Mm.
Yeah, and what I would say is I am cautiously optimistic. I'm hopeful. I do hope the Supreme Court rules against the president on the tariffs. Based on oral arguments, it seems possible, even likely, but I don't trust the Supreme Court to do the right thing. So, but if they do, a lot of money's gonna have to be paid back, hundreds of billions of dollars to the businesses that were unfairly taxed by the tariffs. I fully expect the administration um, to be kicking and screaming and trying to stop that from happening. And if they don't comply with the Supreme Court, if that does happen, we will file litigation. And I think that's going to be a really important moment in this fight, is that if the administration actually tries to stop those payments, it's important for us to also message on that and make sure that people are aware of that in Iowa. And, furthermore, you're going to have the many farmers are in the marketplace. Over half of everyone in the ACA marketplace are small business owners or staff. It's disproportionately represented by that group. And so even if the president comes in and tries to do some type of bailout, the amount of damage that's been done, we need to make sure that, we're able to do the accountability work with it. But it is a substantially different dynamic than existed in 2017, 2018. I would just say one other thing is that his base is starting to erode. This is a really important trend that is important to keep an eye on because, famously he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and my base would stay with me. You look at the disapprovals amongst Republicans in the last couple of weeks, and it's been ticking up. And even online, I see a lot of folks who are Republicans who've supported the president who are starting to turn on him. And if that happens, I mean, that's been his superpower, is being able to hold on to the base. And that's why persuasion amongst groups like farmers and small business owners to reach those disaffected folks I think it's going to be really, really important going into next year.
Great.
I
Okay.
might add something to that,
Yeah,
Shawn, if I
please.
could. And,
Please.
uh, there's been the question, oftentimes people will ask, well, are farmers really surprised Trump did these trade policies? And yes and no, it's much worse than what we expected. It's worse than 5 years ago. What's most surprising, though, is the reaction of our Iowa delegation. We have two members of the Senate Ag Committee, two members of the House Ag Committee. Senator Grassley has spoken up some when we pressured him and has expressed some concern, but everyone's been so quiet about it. That's the most surprising thing, is that there is not the pushback from Iowa policy leaders, from grassroots level all the way up to our Senate and congressional candidates. That's the most surprising thing about the politics of the trade tension.
Great, thank you. Okay, there's one question here that I frankly do not understand. It's very detailed, but it's about no repair requirements and mandatory seed purchase contracts. And so I'm going to invite you, maybe Aaron and Shawn, if you can chime in about that in the chat and just address Eric's question. And then a question that has come up earlier. And maybe now, as we're kind of transitioning basically toward the end of our formal program and moving into our kind of informal chat, there's been a question about, okay, which are the House and Senate races that are like sort of on our radar coming up? And someone else asked, are there strong Democrats ready to run in Iowa? So Jim, maybe if you can give us kind of like a little bit of a lay of the land, and Aaron and Shawn, if you have thoughts on that as well, you can chime in.
No, actually, I defer to Shawn on that. I mean, I
Great.
can do it, but let him do it.
Shawn,
Yeah.
you've been volunteered.
Voluntold, I think it is. So uh, Christine Bohannon, she is almost beat Marionette Miller Meeks last cycle. Marionette Miller Meeks, for those of you who don't know, is the incumbent congresswoman who represents sort of the southeastern part of Iowa. She badly underperformed Trump last time, and she has a tendency to have really close elections. Bohannon raised $1 million, I believe, in the first couple of days after she had announced. And I do think she'll be the nominee there. We'll see. There's a couple of really good candidates in the third congressional district. And then in the second congressional district, the sort of like the front runner from what I've been able to ascertain is a Presbyterian pastor, woman state legislator who is running. That's an open seat. Ashley Hinson, who's running statewide for the U.S. Senate, she's been seen as being a really strong campaigner and good fundraiser, and she's strong. I think the Senate race is going to be an uphill climb. It's doable depending on the national environment, but she's definitely a strong Republican candidate. But that's an open seat. So you have, out of the three, and then Zach Nunn is in the third congressional district, which is a district that has Des Moines and then kind of goes south and a little bit west. He, I would say, is by far the most polished out of the Republican incumbents, and he's generally seen, even though he is a Trump enabler, he's been seen as being a bit more of a, he's like more centrist coded. He tries to at least, and he actually was going to run for governor in Iowa, but Trump begged and pleaded and probably threatened him to not, and so he's running for re-election in the third. But the fact that he was looking to run statewide, I think says something about sort of how he feels like things are going to be in his district. One thing important to know, in case people are wondering, is it is very unlikely there will be um, mid-decade redistricting because of some of the dynamics and the rules and regulations in Iowa. So it's not likely we'll have new maps in the state.
Mhm. And the governor candidate is Rob Sand. Is that the governor?
Yes, he is the current oh, what is it? It's not the treasurer, it's the auditor. Yeah, he's the state
Correct.
auditor. And he's very sharp.
Mhm.
He works his butt off. He puts a lot of miles on his car. And he is very much running a campaign that is about working across the aisle and being bipartisan. He's gone to a lot of Republican events and things, and even though when the local or state GOP tries to discourage that, but he is he is a smart guy and he's been a good auditor. They've tried to kneecap him from doing that job well, and so they've actually passed laws to make it more difficult for him to dig into stuff. And I personally just I don't know the guy personally, but I followed him with great interest for a number of years. I don't think anybody will work harder than him running statewide. And there's been some polling that has shown that he's either a little bit ahead or it's break even. And some of the Republicans that were going to run for governor, haven't gotten into the race. The likely Republican nominee at this point, from what I can tell, and again, it's early, is Randy Feenstra, who currently represents the district that Steve King used to represent in northwestern Iowa. And yeah, the governor's race I do think is going to be competitive this cycle. I don't think that's not just hopium or people wanting that to be true. Like I do think it's going to be competitive.
Great. All right, it is 5 o'clock, so we pride ourselves at 31st Street as being very timely. So this is, I would say, the end of our formal program, but we are happy to hang out for another 15 minutes or so if people have questions or want to chat. Already, I see Meg has a question in the chat for us to talk about. So if you do need to roll off, feel free to do so. But if you want to stay on, we will be here. Let me take Meg's question. I see Judy waving. Meg's question is the DNC showing up in Iowa, and is the Democratic Party in the state becoming more effective?
Yeah.
Anyone?
And there's a lot of work to do within the Democratic Party in Iowa, and that work is progressing well. But we knew that there was going to be it was going to take some time to get up to that, and I'm confident that they're making some good steps in that direction. We in Iowa, frankly, are working hard to develop an infrastructure mindset. Too often in Iowa, we're at the mercy of some caucus dynamics that were out of the control of a lot of grassroots organization trying to build the infrastructure below. And that mindset is changing. And the need to build that infrastructure is very much on the minds of Iowans. And Shawn has impressed upon this, and Jim, you did an excellent job of talking about the need for that building up. And that also applies to the Iowa Democratic Party, to be frank. And so these efforts to build the infrastructure and do less of a top-down approach that is kind of endemic in the caucus process is something that is changing in Iowa for the better. And we think that rural organizations need to be at the forefront of that in Iowa, building that rural infrastructure and doing that through the Iowa Farmers Union and working through the Main Street Alliance is an excellent way to do that.
Great. Any chance Tom Harkin can come out of retirement? Maybe we need some younger candidates. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts that people wanted to share or to ask?
It doesn't have to be about Iowa, too. It can be about anything on your mind. Or
we love Senator Harkin. He advanced rural policy, farm-centered policy so well for the organization, and we are engaging with him on how to bring new leaders up in the rural progressive space. We're looking forward to having him at our state convention for that purpose in just a couple weeks. Yes, we need to build young leaders, but yes, we certainly embrace Senator Harkin and into this movement.
tell us about the convention, Aaron.
Yeah, we've got an excellent lineup, and our executive director Matt Russell is on the call, so he might be filling in a few things on the chat or even stepping in. We have our state convention taking place on the 5th and 6th in Ames, Iowa. We have a candidate forum that's going to focus on these federal candidates. all the ones that we've been talking about today, I believe all of them are set to join us at our candidate forum on Friday. Then on Saturday, we are going to be, and Senator Harkin will be a part of that event as well. On Saturday, we've got an excellent lineup of workshops and panels. Probably the one that is going to get the most attention is dealing with trade tensions. Lori Wallach from Rethink Trade is going to be joining us, and in addition to a preeminent economics professor at Iowa State University, and probably the leading academic on farm policy and farm bill policy, Jonathan Koppas from the University of Illinois, is going to be joining us. But we have workshops on clean water, on rural journalism, on our local food system, and many other things happening throughout the day. So it's going to be an exciting convention.
Awesome.
So there's a question in the chat for me,
Do it. Take it.
Virginia, which I was kind of not unhappy about at all. So this Afton Ben, who's running for the special U.S. House race in Tennessee, I think it's the 7th district that's open, which I think is a Trump plus 21 district. I think she's got a shot. You know, I tend to be optimistic. I think she's got like a 15 to 20% chance. Maybe that's a little optimistic. If you haven't seen her campaign ad on the people trying to ride the bull, the mechanical bull, it's one, it may be the best ad I've seen in a couple of years. I just love that ad, partly because not because of just the choreography, if you will, but because of the sort of anti-billionaire message. And she is quite a candidate. So I will tell you that I did donate a decent amount of money, and I see Ann Common, our colleague, has put the donation link in the chat. I think if you want to, and money will help her at this point. They've started early voting, but the election I think is the 6th. I mean, maybe it's the 2nd. It's a Tuesday, but anyway, they're mobilizing. Money would help them, so that's my answer. You know, we don't tend to get involved in that necessarily, but you know, we won by more than 20 points in Georgia, right? So compared to you know so it's possible.
Yeah. Can I speak to that race real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Caitlin Dray won by 20, like it was a 22-point swing, I believe. And so, I mean, it's like around the bubble. That district is the Republican electorate there is more highly college educated than most districts. And so the sort of turnout differential might be a little lower than it normally would be. But I agree with you. I think she has a shot. We're part of something called the Battleground Alliance, which is an organization working to flip the House in 26. And there's been a lot of discussion with that group about that district. And the Republicans are spending in that district. Like I think the RNC and other folks just sent like $500,000 to Van Epps, the Republican running. So I mean, I agree with your assessment, like 15 to 20%. But the thing I think is important about that race, besides like whether or not she wins, obviously if she wins, that would be an earthquake. But even if it's close, that will freak out the GOP
Exactly. Even if it's
in
close.
the House and hopefully get them to come to the table on the Affordable Care Act stuff and other issues. And so I think there's benefit to being close, even if she doesn't necessarily flip the seat.
Great point. Okay, any other comments, questions, thoughts?
I think we can close it out. Thanks.
All
everyone.
right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Sunday. Thanks for showing up and keep doing what you're doing.